Did you have the shoppers from all the way down North Street? Going
Suggestion
away.
box.
We do have suggestion box with the logos on it.
I was
Okay.
told. Thank you for coming. My name is Bill Kenny. I'm the chairman of the Fall River Redevelopment Authority. And I'm sure you recognize the gentleman to my left, Mayor Correa. Happy to have the mayor here with us today. And as a matter of fact, we wouldn't be here today had it not been for the mayor's foresight in coming to the Redevelopment Authority virtually from the day that he was elected to talk to us about what the Redevelopment Authority could do in terms of urban renewal planning. Historically, Fall River has had urban renewal plans in the past. You look out the window here, you see Old 2nd Street walkway, and you see the Academy building, and some of the other structures in this neighborhood. Those all came to us from urban renewal plans that were put together back in the 60s and 70s. And there have not been any significant urban renewal plans undertaken by the city for decades, literally. And part of that has been lack of funding. The Redevelopment Authority historically has been poor. We've been very lucky recently to have some significant land sales, like Amazon might ring a bell to you, and that has helped us replenish our financial coffers so that now we can get involved in some serious urban planning and urban renewal development, which is what we're supposed to be doing, one of the main things that we're supposed to be doing. The mayor understood that, and the mayor came to us, as I said, very early on, and asked us if we would get involved in developing urban renewal plans, not only for the downtown area, but also for the waterfront. And we're in the middle of that now. And this event today is to kick off a display of some of the preliminary thoughts that our consultants have put together for us in this planning process. We're treating both areas, the downtown urban renewal area and the waterfront urban renewal area, as two separate venues, so to speak, two separate and distinct neighborhoods, each of which has values and assets that are worthy of consideration and work. And although they're distinct areas, we also want to keep in mind the connection between the waterfront and the downtown, which has been something of issue for years in this city. I'm going to have the mayor speak with you, and I'm going to have Emily Innes, who's from Harriman Associates, our consultant, talk to you a little bit more about what an urban renewal plan is all about. First, Mayor Correa, this was your idea. You're stuck with it. I'm stuck with it. What do you think about it so far?
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Well, good morning, everybody that's here and watching at home. This is a really important day because it does fulfill the work we set out to do. As Bill said, literally almost the first week I was in office, I thought to myself, look, we really got to kickstart our waterfront. It's been talked about since before I was born. We have to kickstart and restart our downtown. I remember growing up not too far from South Main Street, actually on William Street, towards the top of William Street. I remember my parents and my grandparents talking about how our downtown thrived, whether it was department stores, whether it was a mall in downtown, whether it was shops and restaurants, it was flourishing. And as mayor, when I set out to become mayor, I really wanted to kickstart economic development again in the city of Fall River in terms of job creation, but also the appearance of the city. So that's why when you look at the trajectory of what we're doing today, we're talking about the future 10, 15 years from now of what the city will look like on our waterfront, what parcels in our downtown will look like. So when you look at these plans, you're going to see highest and best use. You're going to see empty parcels of land that are probably underutilized because right now they may just be surface parking. And through this process, we may end up with a structure that may include a parking garage, that may include a development that's multi-story. You'll see those different scenarios, medium density to high density, both in our downtown and our waterfront. That was really important. We doubled down on that with streetscapes, right? We doubled down with that in improving our infrastructure. So we're not only just improving in long-term planning through this process, we're also improving the appearance of our city and investing in infrastructure projects such as streetscapes. If you're not familiar with that project, that's about a $10 million individual project process that was approved by our city council early last year that will upgrade most of our business districts. So that's East Main, Purchase Street, South and North Main, Bedford Street, etc. So we're really proud of that project. That's going to bring trees, that's going to bring lighting, that's going to bring improved parking, and that's just going to help support the work that's being done here. So it's really important that we create an atmosphere of economic development for business owners, developers, investors, residents, current business owners in the city, and ones outside the city, to see Fall River as a viable place to locate their business and expand opportunities that exist here. So that's what this process is. As Bill mentioned, it was, I think, the first week that I spoke to the Redevelopment Authority, and Ken Fiola was here in the back, and said, look, we got to get this going. Let's do some urban revitalization plans, let's do some urban planning, and let's really start to identify the properties that are on the U list. When you walk our downtown street, when you walk north and south, I think you actually did this in the plan. You're telling us what vacancies are there, right? So when you get past, there's already a lot of vacancies even on first floors, right? Ground level businesses. When you go past the first and second floors, in many of our downtown buildings, they're vacant. They're vacant properties. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that. Some of it could be handicap accessibility with elevators, Patrick's no stranger to that, and how challenging it can be to make sure that you can get an elevator and get handicap accessibility. And there's a lot of resources out there for that, whether it's mass development, whether it's grants, loans, banks. There's a lot of help out there. So this whole process has been, in my opinion, a great process. It's been actually relatively quick. I'm very happy with the results, and I look forward to as much public input in what the future of the city will look like. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, RDA. Great job. And please share your comments out there in the public. Come down to City Hall. We have a suggestion box. Come see the plans, which are along the wall. If you want to pan those walls afterward, you're welcome to do that. And thank you, everyone, for the hard work on this project. Thank you.
I went to a public input session where I didn't learn something. The people that live and work in these neighborhoods know it best, know them best, and we want the input from these folks. We've had 2 public meetings on each of these plans so far. We've had 2 steering committee meetings on each of these plans so far. And this is to cast the net a little wider to make sure that nobody will slip through the cracks and get some comments from the folks in the city. This display will be up for about 2 weeks. And as the mayor mentioned, the suggestion box. I'm the ultimate suggestion box, 508-324-2561, not my home number. But call me, and I always return the calls. And since the mayor mentioned it, this is not the topic for today, but streetscapes. I heard some chatter that maybe the city council was interested in backpedaling on that. That would be a big mistake. These streetscape projects are a significant investment in the city. And I hope that the public will recognize that and call your city councilors and tell them to stick with the commitment that they made months ago to make this thing happen. These are very important projects that will transform neighborhoods where they're taking place. So enough about streetscapes. Emily, take it away.
Thank you very much and welcome. My name is Emily Innes. I'm a senior urban planner with Harriman, and Harriman is the lead consultant on this project. We are also working with FXM Associates to do the economic and market analysis that needs to be done, and with FHI, who is looking at the transportation and circulation. I'm here with my colleague, Willie Perkins-High, who's been intimately involved with both of these projects. It has been a real thrill working in Fall River. The fact that you're looking at both your downtown and your waterfront and the connections between them is incredibly exciting. And what we have to show you today has been the results of quite a lot of background work that you won't see. This information was shown at the last 2 public meetings, and we wanted to, as Bill said, cast a wider net to make sure as many people saw this as possible. So I want to run you through a little bit about what an urban renewal plan is and what you're going to see today, and then I'm going to stop talking so you all have a chance to look at the boards. So an urban renewal plan now is not about the wholesale clearance it used to be. This is about giving the Fall River Redevelopment Authority the tools that it needs for strategic investments in an area that then encourage private investments. So it helps give them the regulatory tools, it helps give them the ability to acquire parcels, but it also helps give them the vision that they can then use in concert with other city organizations, city boards, to ensure that what happens in these 2 areas is consistent with what we've heard from the public over this process. And what's so interesting about doing 2 areas simultaneously is that they each have their own identity, and we've been at great pains to think about how each place should remain different while working together. So what you're going to see today is a little discussion of the goals of each plan, and we've done it in English, Portuguese, and Spanish, again trying to reach out to as many people as possible. Then you're going to see the waterfront, looking at two areas that we spent a lot of time on. One, the Arts Museum and Parks area, which is the direct connection between the waterfront and the downtown, and thinking of the Arts Overlay District. And then looking at two different fit studies or build-out scenarios of what could happen when the Route 79 and Davos Street area is realigned and brought down to ground level. So you'll see a medium density scenario and a high density scenario. These are tests to see what development could look like here. It's not a proposal for specific development. And then you'll see a board for potential acquisitions that the FRRA could, but doesn't necessarily have to make. One of the requirements by the Department of Housing and Community Development for an urban renewal plan is that you identify with that plan anything that you're thinking of acquiring, but it doesn't obligate you to do that. For the downtown, we've looked at three main ideas. One is this idea that North and South Main form a spine, and that spine is missing some of the vertebrae. If you want to continue that, we also talk about missing teeth in terms of design. So our first recommendation would be that those missing teeth are filled in by redevelopment of those areas that are currently vacant in the upper stories, and then by filling in the parcels of land that may now be parking lots. That infill development over time would spread out into the adjoining neighborhoods. And then finally, there's a couple of areas of primarily auto-dependent use over the 20-year life of an urban renewal plan. We see that being knit into the spine of North and South Main Street. Again, these are ideas to see what could happen, whether it's a rehabilitation or a redevelopment. And they're primarily a test to see how that could impact the area and also whether or not your zoning would allow the type of development that people have suggested that they would like to happen. Finally, you'll also see a parcels acquisition for the downtown. And then in the very last corner, there are the results of a visual preference survey we did at the first two public meetings. Visual preference survey gets to the heart of what people would like to see the areas be. And we saw a lot of desire for density and desire for public activities. So you'll see the results of those. You'll also see for both the waterfront and the downtown our analysis of the current design conditions and some of the solutions that we see in helping making these a vibrant, active place in terms of physical design. That physical design, once it's set, tends to also bring in developers and other private investment. And the other thing we use that for is regulatory controls, where the FRRA or the planning board can have design review. It's something that tends to be popular with both communities and developers because everybody knows what to expect. So that's what we have now. As Bill said, this is going to be up for about 2 weeks. Lily and I are going to stay after we finish the public speaking here and answer any questions. I'll be happy to walk the mayor and anybody else through who wants to see this. And thank you very much for coming. Again, it's been a thrill to work in this community.
I'm happy to hear you're staying, but not for 2 weeks, right? I just wanted to make mention and recognize the very hard-working vice chair of the Redevelopment Authority who's with us, Ian Keene. Hi, Ian. Thank you. And, we can field any questions that you folks might have. You can take a look at the presentation boards, leave your comments in the box or my phone number, which maybe you remember.
Hi, and thanks for having this. I was unavailable for the first 2 sessions that you had. Joe Carvalho, President of the Coalition for Responsible Siting of LNG Facilities, as well as a member of Green Futures Environmental Group. And I guess my question is, because we've been involved with the Weavers Cove site since 2003, that's now 14 years, and I see that it's marked 3rd on the list, and I'm actually wondering if that could be speeded up or placed in a higher bracket, if you will, for no other reason than Al Lima's plan from 2005 that talked about how to redevelop that site, 74 acres of waterfront property. And the plan that Al had put together back in 2005 was based on Meditech at Southwood Tupper Pond. And at that time, in 2005, that plan would have brought in $1.5 million in tax revenue for the city. So it included a convention center and a hotel, a 3-season open amphitheater style ball fields, research and development buildings based on the Meditech model, and a host of recreational outliers. Just a terrific plan. A promenade along the river with cafes, with a whole host of things. Do you want to add something to that I may have missed?
Is that all, Joe?
So, and of course, we know that South Coast Rail had already determined that the layover station, which our preference is to have it be underground, would be at the Weaver's Cove site. So now you had an added incentive to people coming out of the train, the commuter rail, at that station with all of those amenities that are available to them. And it's just like a no-brainer. And Al has talked about maybe updating, upgrading the whole plan. So our intention is to, however it can be speeded up and brought to fruition earlier, especially given that the owner of the property now has terrible plans, supposedly, for that site. He owns 2 dumps in Massachusetts. One in Newburyport, how they got a dump there is beyond me, and one in Everett, Mass, called Wood Waste of Boston. And Wood Waste of Boston was actually cited by the Attorney General, Coakley, back in maybe 2005, 2006, 2007, and closed because they brought demolition debris, construction and demolition debris, to the dump that was loaded with asbestos. And I know that the Conservation Commission, viewing whatever preliminary plans were submitted by Mr. Tebow, actually issued a cease and desist order against anything happening. And of course, the coalition and Green Futures has contacted the Lakeville office of the Department of Environmental Protection to make sure that they're aware of Mr. Tebow's history. And also, they've already done a couple of unannounced site visits to be sure that he's not doing anything that would be detrimental to the neighborhood, to the site. Shell Oil Corporation has also been notified of Mr. Tebow's history because they are still the responsible entity for cleaning the oil leaks that happen from their tanks. So whatever can be done to speed up the process, to take that property before he has any kind of development on it. And by the way, too, it was sold to Weaver's Cove Energy for $16 million. Mr. Tebow bought it for 1.2. So every mayor that we've talked to, from Ed Lambert on to you, Mayor Correa, we've talked about taking it by eminent domain. And of course, the talk was, listen, Joe, we can't take it. We don't have the money to purchase that land by eminent domain because of the potential that it had as an LNG terminal. So, but now, with a $1.2 million sale price, our feeling is that this is the best time ever to take that land by eminent domain.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
And that's why it's been identified, and we are working with the state, with Concom, and the Lakeville office on protecting that property.
Great. Thank you.
But please also, what would be important too, is to write that down, okay? So please write it down, put it in the suggestion box, send Bill an email, so we have that in writing, okay? Thank you.
Just to give you an idea of the timing on this, we expect that the plan will be ready for sending up to state level for approval about 90 days. That's ballpark. The plans generally have a 20-year look ahead. They're designed to be 20-year plans. So not everything happens at once, not everything happens on day one, but I can assure you that that particular project, I don't know which list you're looking at or where it is on there, but that is definitely on the radar. It's on the front burner.
Thank you.
And just a note on phasing, we grouped the phasing for, yeah, thank you. Thank you. On the phasing, we've grouped it into particular areas, partly so that we can organize our own thoughts and recommendations about it. Once the plan is approved by DHCD, there's no reason that things can't move either earlier or later than is actually in the plan.
Thank you.
Sir?
Yeah, I was looking at some of these drawings here and aerial photographs of the Duval Street project, and I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. I've been walking that waterfront now all year since I've been back. I came back from California. I lived here for 30 years and then came back after 20 years in California. Thank you. And I was looking at the elevation profile from Central Street all the way down to Turner, and the concept that I was seeing, what stopped a lot of development there is the height of the railroad tracks. The railroad tracks are too high to be able to utilize that hillside from Danforth and Doctor down to Duval. But there's an opportunity. With Duval Street being so low where that gas station is, shifting those railroad tracks down to that level and putting a tunnel over them would allow you to augment the hillside from the level of Duval Street all the way up to Doctor and Danforth, therefore opening up about 40 acres of land from Central Street all the way down to Turner that would be almost level with Doctor and Danforth. You'd be able to put a mix of residential and commercial that would have waterfront view access. Now, the other side of Duval Street, what I'm envisioning is that it would slope down into the park. And that's the point that I want to make about any of the diagrams here, is that we have a state park that goes from Central Street all the way down to Point Gloria. I mean, not including the Cove Restaurant and, of course, the City Pier. The space between Duval Street, even if you were to realign it when you're down just past the Cove, is only about 45 to 55 feet. And I see that some of these diagrams have buildings on the west side of Duval Street, which would degrade, in my opinion, would degrade the quality of our waterfront. The waterfront has a beautiful open view of Somerset. You've got all that room for boats to come in, recreational boats on either side of the Cove Restaurant and the City Pier. And if there were any plans to put buildings on Duval Street, I would highly recommend that you would place them on top of the railroad tracks going up towards Doctor and Danforth and not put any new buildings on the west side of Duval Street. Because that, in my humble opinion, would degrade the quality of the openness of our waterfront. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Please put that in writing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions?
The opening that occurs to the west of City Hall, it just creates a huge, separation between the two parts of the downtown. Is there some way that we could eventually cover that? Because it's been like that for 60 years now, and I think it's about time that we
The big dig.
think about covering it.
All I have is...
Hold on, sir,
Yeah.
1 second.
How would we
Look at
do that?
We address that.
We've talked about that as a possibility, and it's something that we would identify for a longer-term issue in the plan. We don't have costs, but we would recommend that it be studied to find out the feasibility. One of the things, of course, that's important is the structure underneath to make sure that it can hold the weight, or whether of a deck, or whether or not something would have to be augmented. We have heard informally that that structure may be already in place, but we have no actual proof of that. However, if you think again of City Hall as being that hinge between the two halves of North and South Main Street, and thus the two halves of the downtown, creating some sort of development there, whether it's a park in a building or some sort of public civic open space or a combination, would be a really interesting way of knitting it, and so we've been talking about that.
Other questions, or should we take a look? Thank you.
I've got a couple of suggestions. I'm Patrick Norton with the Narrows Art Center. These plans that could happen probably starting tomorrow. We have a serious trash issue on the waterfront and entrances and exits in the city. I know that might not be exactly what this meeting's about, but I'm imploring the city to get serious about cleaning up the trash so that when people come in and out of the city, they have a favorable view of the city. We hear this down, but most of our attendees come from outside of Fall River, and the constant thing we hear is it's a dirty city, you need to clean your city up. So secondly, the Mass DOT has these salt sheds over by the Old Colony Railroad Museum. Do we know what's going on with the Old Colony Railroad Museum, that property yet?
We don't at this time.
We don't know. My suggestion is you take those salt sheds, you move them to the incinerator, which Mass DOT has expressed some interest to, and you open that area up for parking.
We've spoken to Mass DOT about that.
We've been talking about that for 25 years. Just
Talking
saying.
about a lot of things in 25 years, we're gonna get it done now.
Well,
So-
those are a couple of meetings suggestions. Some of this other stuff I think makes sense. I agree with this gentleman about the buildings on the west side of Duval Street. Whatever we decide to do, we gotta keep those buildings low. We don't wanna be building sky. We already have a project that's going up. I think it's probably too high, depending on where you live, but we're stuck with that one. Let's just, I mean, we talk about a lot of these plans, and at 53, this is my third waterfront plan. So I think we really need to figure out ways to get into these things quicker, so that we can see some successes. Because I know a lot of people, I see a lot of the same usual Jim, it's a lot of the usual suspects, and they come to these meetings for 30 years, that we would feel a little bit more heartened. Because all the work is done by the privates, let's be honest. The city has done nothing to develop the Florida waterfront. It's all done by Mike Lund, the Narrows Center, the Cove Restaurant, and Tony Cadero. So everything that's happened on the waterfront has been done by private individuals, not the city. It's the city's job to now set up, get the thing clean, and continue to improve the streetscapes, create some parking. Let's do that while we're working on this. Let's not say that we're going to start cleaning up the waterfront when we build a building. We need to get to some of these plans immediately.
I just want to say, I'm Jim Rogers, and I'm probably one of the few people who are still a past businessman from Main Street in Fall River. I was 14 years old when I started working on Main Street with my father, opened a cigar store in 1955 on the corner of North Main and Central. And I kept the business going for 44 years until 99, until the economy just about croaked all the small businesses at the time. So I've been around Main Street, and I've seen what has happened now, what could be done for the future. In the old days, we had downtown was a neighborhood community where people came to do their banking, their retail shopping, and any professional work that they needed. There were thousands of people who walked the streets, and even on Friday nights when they had Friday night shopping, the retail stores were open. I don't think that we're ever going to see that in our lifetime here, but I think that something positive could be done. Downtown should be a showcase for the city of Fall River, where you're going to make it a combination of professional businesses, banking businesses, and retail shops, as well as restaurants. And I think it's a good thing that you're doing something positive, and I'd like to be a part of this and going forward in the future. Thank you.
Any other questions? Move here, and we'll take a look at the proposed supports.
Since that the redevelopment authority is planning for 15 to 20 years in the future, should we be incorporating something related to the Quequechan River, daylighting the Quequechan River as it comes down over the cliff? How do we incorporate that into this plan? It seems to me that it's very important. It could happen fairly soon now that the CSO is cleaning up the Quequechan River. So what can we do to make that happen?
Can I address that?
So we've heard that that's a very popular thought, and the people that have been attending our meetings, how do you daylight the Quequechan River? It could be a longer-term project, and we're still evaluating that. The information that we get over the next couple of weeks will help with that. However, we were interested at our last meeting to hear that you can actually see the Quequechan River in some of the basements of the buildings in the downtown. We saw it ourselves down at Workout World. We took a little field trip down to see what we could see. And we were talking, I don't know if you all have heard of tactical urbanism, but it's a way of doing short-term projects. Did you just buy the book? See, it's a great thing. It's a way of doing short projects for quick money. And one of the things we were kicking around on our way back after the meeting, the two of us, Billy, myself, and Kartik, who's one of our urban designers, was how do you show people what the route of the Quequechan River is above ground, using signs or paint or temporary paint or something like that. So first, I think your first step would be probably to educate people about where it actually is, because a lot of people don't know. And then after that, maybe look at the long-term plans. I think it would require more study than is in the scope of a redevelopment plan or an urban renewal plan, but it's certainly something we can identify as having been of interest to the people who have approached us. Oh, and one more thing before I forget, please make sure if you haven't already to sign in to let us know that you were here. That'll help put some names to faces for us as well.
Okay. Yes, last question.
Quickersham River presents a great deal of horsepower. The people who built this city back in the early 1800s knew that, and they built an empire based on the water power. The Quickersham River, should it be daylighted, should it be rechanneled, should it be utilized the way they used it back in the early 1900s, could generate revenue for the city by generating electricity. If we put water turbines all the way down Interstate 195 and underground, you could use that horsepower and you could have a steady revenue stream for Fall River that could help you fund some of these other neighborhood projects.
Let me just address holding back on this, but I want to talk about the Quaker Shane for just a minute. The first study that I saw several years ago reminded me of the Hoover Dam. It was this unbelievable, huge project in this area with the creation of a little lake in front of it and massive infrastructure changes. And I got to say, I think there are some smaller battles that can be fought that can bring more immediate and more realistic results. Quaker Shannon River is visible in a number of spots around Workout World. You can see the falls. You can see the river underneath the Braga Bridge. I was interested to find, just by chance, on a visit to MassDOT several months ago, that a design scheme has been put together by somebody actually in their legal department for dealing with those salt sheds, dealing with the mouth of the river as it goes under Central Street Bridge and into the cove, and creating that whole area. It's really a beautiful addition with access to the riverbank itself. And these are things that are doable in the shorter term and with a lot less infrastructure change and a lot less money. There are also falls visible in the middle of the Workout World building complex and on the uphill end of it. Smaller vest pocket park opportunities where you can have more immediate short-term results that are just as interesting and just as attractive to tourism and to local people as some of the larger scale projects. So I'm hopeful that, and I know we talked about this in our planning, and these are things that I hope will be identified in the final plan as potential takings or acquisitions or areas of interest, so that, you talk about the 20-year scheme, those are things that can happen more in 3 or 4 years, and I think they ought to be given some serious consideration. That's just my thought. Little victories. Get some little victories going.
They add up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for participating today. Please submit your comments to the public that's watching. Please come down to City Hall, to our atrium right here in City Hall. Take a look. They'll be up for 2 weeks. Please, if you could pan onto the boards that are to my left, and then there'll be a suggestion box here. And you can always email Phil Kenny or myself, Mayor,
1-800-BILL.
mayor@fallriverma.org with questions or comments about the process. Okay? Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
That are required by the DEA or not.
I think down here you guys will be all set.
Well, I didn't bring all of it.
Okay.
But everything else was there.
Okay.